Welcome to the By Design radio program. My name is Dr. James Proodian of Proodian Healthcare and ProodianHealthcare.com, where health literacy is the key to longevity. And as long as God has us on this side of eternity, my show is designed to help you and your families to feel better, function better, and live as many quality disease-free years as possible. Thanks for joining me this week. If you haven't heard, Tandem Radio is not going to be broadcasting anymore on the bridge. And I wanted to take this time to, this is not my last show, but next week will be my final show. And I always wanted to take this time to really thank Glenn DeLakey and the Tandem Radio, and of course the Bridge FM and Pastor Lloyd, and everyone at the Bridge for giving me the opportunity. It's been such a blessing to think that I've done almost 110 shows by now. I started off, Glenn said, James, do you want to do a radio show? I said, I'll give it a try, but I don't think people are going to like me much. I'm a public speaker, but I've never done radio before. But, you know, with the grace of God, here I am over 2 years into this, and I'm really going to miss speaking to you each week and educating you guys. And thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to take an idea that I had, which was taking the design of who we are and enabling us to look at it from the perspective of how man has taken God's design and has really been destroying it. And if you remember, if we go back to way back to shows 1, 2, I talked to you about the Triad of Health. And the Triad of Health is a poster that hangs on my walls in all of my treatment rooms. And there's 3 circles, and the 3 circles are physical, nutritional, and psychological. And I tell my audiences that every day we have to wake up, and God gives us basically 3 things to do. We have to think, we have to have emotion, and we have to have a mental state. That's our psychological health. We have to keep relationships. We have to communicate. Then we have this physical body that we have to go and move. And the physical body, which is made up of muscle and tendon and disc and nerve. And that's part of our job, which is to maintain our physical body, to maintain our psychological health. And then the third and final bucket is nutritional. We have to feed ourselves. And protein, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, and water are the essentials to life. God told us, here's your physical body, you have to feed it. And we've taken that triad, which is physical, nutritional, and psychological. And the show was created, you know, in taking apart God's design, the way he actually designed this miracle of life. And I put forth the question, how are we doing? Like, how are we doing with respect to taking care of ourselves? So as I wrap up my final 2 shows, I want to bring all of the pieces kind of together that we've spoken about over the last couple of years, but more specifically, this year. We started this year off, if you were with me last January, we talked about buying a health journal. And in that health journal, we were going to create a new wellness lifestyle. Now, that wellness lifestyle was not going to follow man's plan, because man's plan is to create all of this chronic illness, and there's so much heart disease and cancer and obesity and high blood pressure and osteoporosis and itises, inflammation all over the place. We want to live in a counterculture and do God's plan. And that's what his design was for us. So this year we learned about metabolic syndrome. We did a whole bunch of shows on pain, what pain is, where it comes from, the things that we could do from an anti-inflammatory perspective. Then we did about 10 or 12 shows on keeping real expectations and transforming ourselves. We used Dr. Amen's book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Body. I got some great feedback on those shows. Then we took apart a bunch of topics. We did things like gluten. We did things like whole grain. We talked about allergies. We talked about becoming the counterculture. And a counterculture means, just as Christians don't want to participate in man's world, especially right now with what's going on in the world right now, and we live kind of in a counterculture, whereas we're following God's plan, not man's plan. I kind of take the same attitude towards our health. I understand that health is not on nearly the same level as salvation, but if we are looking at ourselves from the perspective of how we're serving God, I want to serve God with a clear mind, a strong body, and I want to be feeding myself very well every day. That's not to say there's not tragedy and trauma out there. And if we could avoid the bad tragedy and trauma, it's up to us to learn God's plan for our design and to implement it. We talked about eating green this year. We did some shows on molecular medicine. And the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about healthy mother, healthy child. And last week, I talked about trim kids, which is the absolute nightmare that's going on, which is a man-made nightmare. We did this to our children. And the fact that children and the obesity level in children is at an all-time high. And I shared with you that a child who is obese by the time they're 18 years old will have an 80 to 90% chance of staying that way for their life. And that 1 out of 3 children born after the year 2000 will develop type 2 diabetes in a lifetime. And this is the first generation of children born after the year 2000 that will have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. Now that is because of our influence on their physical, their nutritional, and their psychological health. So we have created a stressful world, a world where we don't relax much. We don't follow God's plan of, like, for instance, after we have dinner, like our grandparents did, they would go outside and walk around the neighborhood and talk to their neighbors. We talked about how much the smartphone and technology has taken over our children's lives and all of these things. And last week I kind of ended, but I wasn't done with the conversation about how we as parents, our job is to run our homes as monarchies. My house is not a democracy. Parents have to parent. We have to lead. And sometimes the choices that we make, like for instance, I have a 13-year-old daughter that has recently started to refuse to eat breakfast. Well, there are going to be consequences of that. So we have to implement change into the home right when we see that there is a problem, and we have to identify the nutritional, physical, and psychological needs of our children. So I was using Dr. Southern's book, Trim Kids, and we talked about like the first 90 pages of that book, what it's all about, why is it important. And I told you guys, if you have a child who has a obesity problem, maybe their self-esteem is beaten up a little bit, they're not participating in going outside and playing, for instance. We talked about go outside and play is what children should be doing. That's God's design. And with God's design, as opposed to youth organized sports, God's design makes so much more sense. So after Dr. Southern gives us this introduction in her book about the who, what, where, why, and how do we go do this, she then puts together 12 weekly sessions. And I told you guys out there, go buy her book. And I'm just going to give you the names of the 12 sessions that she has in her book. Chapter 1 is Ready, Set, Go. Chapter 2, Eating Meals and Snacks, the Trim Kids Way. Number 3, Resolving Problems Family Style. Number 4, monitoring your momentum. Number 5, body basics. Number 6, esteem builders. Number 7, success over stress. Number 8, keeping it all together. Number 9, emotional pitfalls. Number 10, taking vacations and dining out. Number 11, fun facts and relapse prevention. And number 12, reassuring, recommitting, and forging the future. So you could hear a lot of physical, nutritional, and psychological in there, because what I loved about Dr. Southern's program, it's not about the scale or the mirror. This is all about esteem building. This is the fact that the coach of Trim Kids is the parent. It's a parent and child coming together, addressing a situation in the home with love, and it all starts, like I was sharing with an audience yesterday as I was out doing a lunch and learn, it all starts with the kitchen cabinets and the refrigerator. As families, we need to get back to God's plan for us. We are farmers, and farmers, not that I'm expecting you to grow your own cattle and grow your own chickens and go outside and start a farm, although it might be a good idea to do some vegetable planting with your children. It's a great hobby to have. I'm saying that it's really important that we shop, we prepare, and we eat as families. This is something that our society has so woefully thrown out the window. And it is such a shame, and it's costing us dearly. The fact that the American family doesn't eat together anymore, and the fact that we eat out so much. You know what? Start saving your money. Put your money into investing it into food that you cook yourself. And I am pretty adamant about this point. Yes, I'm very passionate about it. I told the audience yesterday, and this was a group of very, very smart engineers, people who design things like robots and stuff. And I'm looking at them, and it was kind of funny because it was a lunch and learn. And I have about 30 different programs that I've written that I deliver. And I was doing one of my nutritional workshops, and their lunch and learn they had pizza. And it was just kind of comical that here we are talking about nutrition and inflammation, and they had pizza. And they said, just think about it. If you had brought your lunch to work today, if you had your fruits and your vegetables bagged up and whatever source of protein that you're going to have, and you're drinking a bottle of water, think about how much money you're saving, also how healthier that is. And that trickles down to our children. Because if you bring it into the house for yourself, your children are going to develop that lifestyle. And remember, Luke 1:37, for with God nothing is impossible. We can transform, we can make change, and we can live by His design. Now, if you hear me coming kind of even more passionate and emotional than I normally am, it's because we're talking about children. Now, no parent would ever nowadays take their 5-year-old, put them in the front seat of a car without a seatbelt on. Why? Because we want to protect them. No parent would take, something that was dangerous or poisonous and give it to one of their children. We love our children, but every day, the decisions that parents make for their children that creates type 2 diabetes, that creates obesity, that creates the chronic illness, that creates neurological impairment, the way they think, the way they process information. God's design did not include eating man-made food, man-made, inflammatory, processed food. So we have to take a hard look at this, guys. It's not fluffy. This, if I was in front of a PTA, or if I was in front of a board of administrators that run a school system, you're not going to hear a lot of fluff from me, which is why they don't invite me into the school systems. To truly protect our children are not just baby adults. Their physiology is different than ours. As they're developing organs and growing muscle and growing bone, they are in a different metabolic state than we are. They require a healthy nutritional program. And so I can't emphasize this enough for any parent out there to really go pick up Trim Kids, even if you have a healthy child, a child that has a normal body weight and a normal BMI. And like I shared with you last week, if you run blood chemistry and they have normal triglycerides and normal cholesterol, especially that LDL, then okay, that's great. But you know what? We could always do better on building this wellness lifestyle. Go back with me to January. Okay, we took out our health journals. Maybe by now you got about 40 to 50 weeks of me and you. And as I conclude next week with my final show, all of these shows are on YouTube. You could start from program 1 if you like. The great thing about the radio with the Tandem and the Bridge, they've allowed me to record these, and I've put them on my YouTube channel. And maybe you go back and you pick through them again. Education, literacy, health literacy is the key to longevity. We need to be following God's design. I'm not sure what my date and hour that He takes me home is, but until that time, I am going to cherish the miracle of life that He gave me from a physical, a nutritional, and a psychological perspective. And I'm certainly going to build that within my children so that when they go off to college at the age of 18 and 19, move out of the house many times, the equipment, the tools that I equip them with, I pray are solid for life. Not just their walk as a Christian and being a strong-minded Christian in this world, but also to have the understanding that God designed them a certain way so they make strong decisions in their physical, their nutritional, and psychological life, and following God's plan. So that's Dr. Southern's book on Trim Kids. Let's follow and look at the ways we eat. I can't emphasize enough to join a co-op farm. Buy seasonal fruits and vegetables. Buy them from a local farmer. Get plugged into eating grass-fed beef, eating organic chicken, drinking plenty of water, a bountiful of fruits and vegetables, and really avoiding a man's food, especially with our children, and especially for you parents out there that have a child on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. And if that includes ADD, ADHD, Asperger's, any type of spectrum disorder, you really need to learn about the neurotransmitter, the imbalance, and the sensitivity to foods, and how that relates to so many of the spectrum disorders and the allergies that the kids have today. Okay? So hopefully as we conclude this show, we're looking at our children, we're looking at our lives. I wanted to take a reflective look back on the year, looking at your health journals. Feel free to go to my YouTube channel, and next week will be my final show, and we'll wrap up and say goodbye for now, because it certainly has been a blessing for me to have this show. And again, thank you, Glenn DeLakey and Tandem Radio and the Bridge FM for giving me this very unique opportunity. You've been listening to the By Design radio program, and thank you for listening to me, Dr. James Proodian. If you'd like any more information about me, go to ProodianHealthcare.com. Please become a blog subscriber at drproodian.com. That's Proodian. I blog every Wednesday. Have a blessed week. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless you and your families.